Okay, let's get right into it. Hello and welcome to the Freakish Lemon video podcast. I am your host, the Freakish Lemon. I go by Adrian. I use masculine pronouns. Welcome. Any new viewers, thank you so much for clicking on whatever you got, whatever you clicked on to get here. I appreciate the interest. And welcome back, any returning viewers. Thank you so much for following along with me for this thing that I do. If you don't know what's happening, this is a crafty type podcast coming to you from the Northwest Hills of Connecticut. Show notes for this episode and all episodes can be found at freakishlemon.com or freakishlemonpodcast.com. They go to the same place. We do have a group on Ravelry. If you click on the groups tab and search Freakish Lemon, you will be able to find us. And you can follow me at all the fun places like Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Ravelry, as Freakish Lemon. If I am there as Freakish Lemon. And all the links to these things will be in the down bar here on YouTube or around here if you're watching this somewhere else. I feel like I've been in and out of focus. I'll get to that in a moment. And if you do want to follow me here on YouTube, just consider hitting that little subscribe button so that you know when I post new videos. Filming this on Sunday, November 12th, 2017, which seems to be filming day. It used to be Saturdays, but nope, not recently. Anyway, real quick, we're gonna do a little bit of podcast stuff. We are still talking. Words hard. Minimal editing for this episode, guys. I'm not gonna edit this out. Blanket Make-Along 2017, we are still going through that because it's a year-long make-along where we make blankets. Whatever craft, don't care. Doesn't matter when you start it, doesn't matter when you finish it. Just work on some blankets. And check out the Ravelry group for the details. There's a thread there with all the information where you can post, how you post, whatever. Quarterly prize drawings are a thing. I drew for 3 prizes for the third quarter, and only one person got back to me. It's been a month, so I'm redrawing for the physical prizes. And by I'm redrawing, I have redrawn for the physical prizes. So, first physical prize, the Heldercraft. Just throw yarn all over my keyboard. The Heldercraft hand-dyed. Yeah, I'm doing so well, guys. Doing so well. Heldercraft hand-dyed yarn. This and this Notions kit. That is still intact. I did drop it, but it's fine. I redrew for this prize. This is now going to post 359 Angie Ship, who's Andrea or Andrea. I'm not sure where the emphasis is, but post 359 Angie Ship. This prize is for you. So shoot me a message on Ravelry saying that you're a Blanket Make-Along prize winner with your mailing address, which I may have. I'm not sure. I recognize most people's names when they participate in these things, but I don't know who's contacted me, who hasn't contacted me. Whatever. So yes, contact me with your mailing address saying that you're a Blanket Make-Along prize winner, and I will get this out to you as soon as possible. And then the second prize that I have redrawn for, tenses are a thing that I'm having trouble with, is this skein of Dynamics yarns, dyed by the lovely Mars of the Hey Brownberry podcast with her daughter. In the Peculiar Miss Peregrine colorway, DK weight yarn, and this bundle of minis. And this is going to post 251 Kathy345, who is Kathy. Again, username is familiar. I have no idea if I have your mailing address. So, Kathy, you've won this. Send me a message with your mailing address saying that you won a Blanket Make-Along prize, and I will get this out to you. Yes, good. Huzzah. We have done a thing. Prizes Angie Ship, Kathy345. Let me know that you've seen this and get me your mailing address so I can get you prizes. That's really it for podcast stuff. Nothing's really changed. There's no new make-alongs. No new prize giveaways that I'm planning on at the moment. So we'll go into life stuff. I might not have been in focus in the very beginning of this because I had to wipe my phone. That was fun. I switched carriers back in May, I think. I may have talked about it on the podcast, but anyway, I switched carriers, got a new phone, got everything set up, so I thought. But recently, it's been made... this sentence got away from me. I've been made aware that people were trying to leave me voicemail messages, and they could not. And people were saying that they had left me voicemail messages, but my phone was saying that I had no voicemail messages. So, I tested this out. I made Gabby call my phone, let it ring out, and no voicemail. None. So I went to a retail location for my phone carrier and I said, hey, my voicemail doesn't work. Can you fix it? Unfortunately, because the voicemail app is a native app that's like a one-time setup thing for the phone, we had to back up my phone and reset it to factory settings. And you always forget how used to your personal settings on your phone you are until you either get a new phone or you have to reset your entire phone. You're just like, oh, I'm getting all these notifications. How did I turn this off? How did I make this do this? Ugh, it's a mess. So, I know I did have some settings for my video recording camera app that probably got wiped out in that whole thing. So, sorry if I was out of focus in the beginning there. It happens. Other life stuff. Hands are improving, a lot less twinging, which is good. Still a little sore at times. I have not tried hand knitting for a while, but I don't want to try it again until I'm more confident in the healing of my hands. I am scheduled for a nerve conductivity test in a couple weeks to see what's going on with the nerves in particular, with the inflammation down. So we'll see where that's going. But yeah, a lot less twinging. I did a little bit of cross stitch. I've been doing some spinning, which I'll talk about later, and things where I can keep my wrists aligned, I can get back into those things. So hand sewing, cross stitching, spinning, where I'm not rotating my wrists a whole lot. I'm back 100% on that. So huzzah for that. Work is a mess. Yeah, I don't know, I feel like when things at work are crazy, I just kind of shut down my social media and just like curl up in a ball and not communicate with the outside world. I was debating whether or not to even do this podcast today, because work is very stressful. We're coming up on that office move, which is scheduled for the end of the first full week in December, as of right now, and parking is a thing, because the building we're at now owns its own lots. It has 2 surface lots and an underground garage for 2 floors. So parking was never an issue at the building we're at now. Moving the office to downtown means that you have to deal with city lots and the parking companies that have spaces in downtown Hartford. And there are a couple of other companies that are moving into the area at the same time we are. So parking is a scramble. It's been super stressful, and those parking garages do not want to get back to you. They don't want to talk to you. They don't reach out. The only reason I know that I got into a lot is one of the supervisors working in the office has basically been hounding them constantly, and so they just gave her a list of people who they approved for monthly parking. I'm on the list. I'm 95% sure my parking is sorted, but I will not be 100% sure until I have that parking pass in my hand and I've forked over some dollars. And it'll be a couple of weeks before I do that, because I don't know what's happening, because nobody tells me anything, so I'm just tagging along with my supervisor when she goes to pay for her parking, which is managed by the same people. It's a nightmare. Oh, goodness. It's the worst possible time to be moving to, because with what I do with invoice review, there's a lot of pressure to clean things up before the fiscal year end, and with the transition we made with our software and now an office move, things are not going to happen the way that both the client and the executives will want it to happen. It's just not going to happen. So it's going to be super stressful. And yeah, so that's where I'm at with that. Not good. Which may mean a dip in crafts and or frequency in the podcast coming up on the end of November, beginning of December, just because everything's trying to happen at the same time for work. And I hate my job enough. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly was New England Fiber Festival, which was on November 4th and 5th. I went on Sunday, November 5th, and it was quiet this year. There was not a lot of people in attendance compared to last year, which made me sad. But I love this Fiber Festival. I will keep going to this Fiber Festival for as long as I can. It's probably my favorite out of all the ones that I've gone to. It's just a great selection of things. It's a great balance between fiber and yarn and needlecraft and other tangentially related fiber crafts. There's bag makers, there's like specialty bag makers, there's always at least one booth there with spinning wheels. There's folks there who do a lot of rug hooking and other wool felt crafts. It's like applique type crafts, and there's always a booth there that has fat quarters and fabric by the yard for quilting. And there's always, one day I'm going to buy lamps from this guy. This guy's got some really cool stuff. He buys, I don't know what you call it, but when a mill closes, they usually have a bunch of bobbins and spools and things left over from just like what they used to do. And New England used to have a big textile industry in this area. So you can often find a lot of old spools, a lot of old bobbins, a lot of old like milliners' heads and wooden like foot model and hand model things for when people would display fabric in shops and that kind of thing. And this guy takes that stuff and a lot of it he turns into lamps. So you get those like big, like foot-long spools that are like this big around. He'll stand it up and turn it into a lamp. And some of them will still have threads on it from, you know, weaving mills and stuff. And sometimes he'll just have a bucket of bobbins and spools and things, just like ones he hasn't used yet, and you can buy them for cheap. I have to find my spools. I did buy some like 2-inch high spools to turn into Christmas ornaments for $0.25 each. I gave him $1 and picked those out. His booth is always really cool, and one day I will buy lamps from him because those lamps are pretty awesome. But yeah, it's a lovely fiber festival, and I feel like it's one that's kind of overlooked because of it's 2 weeks out from Rhinebeck. And a lot of people are like fiber festivaled out by that point, but I absolutely love that one. And I will have goodies to show you from that fiber festival later on in the podcast. Which brings us to the crafting things. I have no finished objects this week. Honestly, I've kind of had a hard time concentrating on what to work on for the past 2 weeks. Because I have been able to spin again, so my attention has been pulled in 5 different directions instead of just the couple that I was playing with. So because I have been spinning again, I've been working on a lot of spinning. Most notable progress is I finished up a bobbin of my mystery fleece spin. There was about half of this was full when I stopped spinning because of my hands. So I put half a bobbin on here over the past 2 weeks, which is fantastic. And for new folks to the podcast, because it's been a while since I talked about my mystery fleece. A couple of years ago, when I first kind of got the idea into my head to process my own fleece, I started looking around locally because I do live in kind of a farmy area to see if there was anybody locally who was selling fleeces. And there was a farm about 15 minutes from me where she was just looking to get rid of some fleeces. Unfortunately, a lot of the wool was no good anymore. She's not a spinner or anything. She had plans to become one, but that didn't end up working out. So they were stored in these big feed bags up in a barn loft. But she was honestly just aiming to get rid of the wool without having to throw out everything. So I just grabbed a recent one from that year, paid her $10 and shoved it in the trunk of my car. And there was actually 2 fleeces in there for $10. It's a mystery fleece because the fleeces were sheared off of some sheep that she doesn't know what breed they are. They were orphaned sheep. An acquaintance of hers had family who had a farm up in Maine who passed away, and they had a couple of sheep, and there was no information on what breed of sheep these were. So it's mystery. It's a mystery fleece. My plans for this are to do 2-ply. It'll probably end up being a kind of a DK weight. I don't know. I'm not very good at judging the weight of my spins because I'm not a very consistent spinner, which I don't mind. I really don't. If my stuff's gonna be hand spun, it's gonna look like it was spun by hand. It's not. I'm not doing factory level consistent spinning here. And I don't mind that. That's just the way I am. So I've put on half a bobbin of this, and I have been working on my brown Cormo sweater spin. Not significant because I have less of this wool to spin up. So I kind of want to get a move on this. and then focus on the Cormo. And I have so many bobbins now that basically I'm just gonna spin a bunch of stuff ready for plying and then have a plying party. So one of these days I'm gonna have like half a dozen finished objects in terms of spinning all at once just because I plied them over the course of a week. So that's that. Have been working on the Cormo sweater spin, but it's on the wheel, so I'm not taking it off. And I have been working on some drop spindling projects. I have been working on my alpaca spin. Where did it go? Oh, it's not even on here anymore. Well, I've got nothing to show you because it's in the other room. But I have a bunch of bits and bobs of hand-spun alpaca that I will be eventually combining into, I think, Quaker Yarn Stretcher, which is, I believe, a free pattern on Ravelry. Don't remember who it's by. But I've been working on this black alpaca, which I've got about that much left. So I think I've got about half left. I've got one more alpaca thing in here in this kind of light brown color, and that's 4 ounces. And then I'll be done with my alpaca spin, and it'll be ready for knitting. I did fill up this spindle and I wound it off onto a storage bobbin, and I forgot that I did that, so I have no actual spinning to show you there, but I am making progress with that, which is good, because it feels good to kind of be finishing up a project spin where I know what I'm doing with it, and eventually we'll have a thing that I've planned out from start to finish. And then, since going to Rhinebeck and going to New England Fiber Festival, I needed something to do with my hands if I was sitting around waiting or in a line or something. I did a smidge at Rhinebeck, but not enough to really show you in that episode following that fiber festival. But I've been doing some drop spindling with my plastic 3D printed turtle-made Turkish spindle, which is my travel spindle. So the first thing I did was I did some... Oh, are these plied? Did I ply these? I did ply these. These are... Oh, I'm dropping them. I can't even remember what I did. These are little fiber samples from Classy Squid Fiber Company. And they're just little 2-ply... Oop, that's extra fuzz. Little 2-ply balls. They haven't been set or washed or anything, but see, there's the color on that one. Where's the camera? And then there's this one, which is a natural. And then there's this one, which is a kind of a midnight blue. And that was really what tested me to get back into spinning, is I had a bunch of these, so I'm like, those are easy enough where I can put them down and stop if I can't, but I can. So did these little 3, and then I've been working on this 2-ounce top. I got it out of a D-stash on Etsy. A dyer was getting rid of some just leftover bits for cheap, and this was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. It's a little less bright than what's showing on screen for me right now, but it's, you know, pumpkin-y colors. And so far I have 3 turtles of it. Unfortunately, they're kind of muddied out. But I'm gonna spin all of this as singles first, see what it looks like. And then I have some leftover orange and red that I was experimenting with on my drum carder. That's kind of the color of fall leaves. And I'll spin that up as singles, and I'll just do a little bit of test, and if those ply together well, I'll ply them together, but if not, I'll just ply these and over dye them. Because, you know, this orange and green kind of muddies out. Yeah, let's get that focus in there. You can see it's kind of muddying out in a lot of areas. Like, this green's pretty okay, but, like, the orange is kind of fading out and being muddied up by the green and the undyed, so. But we'll see what the rest of these turtles look like when I'm done spinning them. Again, another project that I don't have here to show you because it's my weaving project. I have been putting in some time on the weaving project. I put in about a foot of weaving on the third rectangle, which is good. I think puts me at half the rectangle length that I need. So hopefully that'll be finished soon that I can show you that. Oh, missed one in my show notes. I'll finish the information later when I'm done filming there. I did start a project on the knitting machine. I've been playing around with swatches some more on there, but I did start something this week on the knitting machine. I found a pattern from Patterns for flat knitted mittens. Because my knitting machine is a single bed knitting machine, I can only knit flat things on it. And I have this Cormo that I dyed up. It is super bright on camera, but it's yellow, orange, and red to make mittens. And I've finished the knitting on this one mitten, but I need to rip back and do something different because I don't know what kind of freakishly long hands these pattern writers have, but that's how much this mitten is too tall. Like, the thumb's long, but it'll pull down a little bit once I seam up that thumb piece. And the stockinette is curling, so it's not really fitting my hand very well as I show this to you. But that's way too long. And as it is, I did the decreases at an increased rate from what the pattern called for, and it's still way too long. So I've got this marker here to put this back on the machine and start my decreases from that point. And I've counted out which row that is, so the second mitten, I know exactly how long it needs to be before I do the decreases. How many rows before I do the decreases. Everything else worked out fine. My edge stitches on this thumb are a little wonky, but that's because it wasn't designed for machine knitting. It was designed for knitting on 2 needles, so I opted to just keep these stitches in hold position and just kind of knit the middle, which probably not the best idea since putting the weights on there doesn't really work so great. But playing around with a thing. Yeah, and this is a very tight gauge for this yarn. This is a worsted weight yarn, and I don't remember the exact gauge, but the link to the pattern will be in the show notes. But it was... The stockinette for this is to the dial setting 3 on my Silver Reed LK 150, which is the setting that I am planning to use for a shawl gauge with fingering weight yarn. The setting I used for my DK weight sweater was at 5. So getting started on it, and the ribbing's at 2. So getting started on this was really hard because the yarn did not want to pull through those needles that way. And sometimes at the edges, I do have to manually fix those stitches because it's just a very tight gauge for this yarn. I mean, I understand why you want a tight gauge on your mittens, because they're going to be a little rough because they're on your hands, but I don't know. That just seems like a very tight gauge to me. I don't know, but playing around with it, yes, but I am excited about it. I'm very pleased with how these decreases look, because I figured out which way to do them so that they actually point inwards. And then the pattern calls to do a Kitchener on the top, but I did a 3-needle bind off. I zipped this off on some waste yarn and then put it back on and did a 3-needle bind off, just because that's something I can easily do on the machine. And the bind off that I'm really liking now from the machine is not one that I've ever seen in hand knitting books before. Could be I just haven't come across it, but it's actually a method of backstitching through the stitches, which makes for a really nice bind off when it's on the machine, because everything's tensioned evenly on the hooks. And I really, really like that finish. Much better than my previous bind offs on the machine. So I think I'm going to stick with that for the machine for the time being. But yeah, so yeah, I have kind of a mitten. But the thing I've really been kind of spending time on, because they've been kind of easy to pick up and go with, are my Halloween strip quilts. So I had a morning where I laid out all the strips for my strip quilts, and it became apparent to me that it was obviously going to be 2 quilts. There was way too many strips for a single quilt for what I wanted to do. So 2 quilts. I arranged the one for the candy stripe quilt, which is going to be stripes of horizontal stripes with black fabric in between, and then I set out 3 kind of color family strip groups for, I don't remember what you call this quilt, but it's squares with diagonal strips in them. So the first step to strip quilting, if you don't know, is to take all your strips. Well, I mean, there's lots of steps, but the first actual sewing portion of the strip quilting is to lay out all your strips and then just sew them together. So this is the grouping that's going to be for the candy stripe quilt. So what you'll see in that quilt is vertical strips like this, in varying widths, but in this kind of fabric order. Some of them will be flipped the other way, so it's not exactly the same across. But I wanted to show you, because this will be the full, this is, a little under 4 feet. This will be the length of the first portion of the quilt. This is a quilt that is going to have a couple of borders, because I'm looking up techniques on quilting on small machines, and how you attach the borders is one of the methods. So I'm going to try some of those with these quilts. So this is going to be the length There we go. You can see corner to corner. That's going to be the length of these pieces once I cut straight vertical strips out of these horizontal ones. So this is one, and I had done 3 other ones, but I've been working on those 3 other ones since there's less planning with them because I wasn't anticipating making a quilt in that style, so I just was, let's fool around with it. This one requires a little bit more planning, just because I have to figure out how I want the strips to go. But I basically took sheets like this and then cut 6-inch squares with the stripes as diagonals. And then I laid them all out on the floor and I arranged them. You may have seen on my Instagram. I arranged a layout for them and then sewed them into these blocks. So I've got 6 of these. So here's one. Trying to keep them in the same order, facing the same direction. I do have a photo of the way that they're going to go, but if I can keep them in the same order and the same direction, that would be helpful. Here's another one. This one. I really like how these came together. I ended up with 2 extra. I don't know how that happened, but oh well. I'm sure at some point I'll do a really scrappy Halloween quilt with just like leftover bits from all my previous quilts. And this is the last one. And they look really cool. There are styles of quilts where you would put these directly next to each other, but that's not what I'm going to do with these just because I only have 6 of them. So to kind of bulk them out a bit, I'm going to separate them with some plain black cotton because I have a ton of it right now. But I think what I was debating whether or not to do full 6-inch size squares or kind of half size strips. So I think what I'm going to do is do the half size strips, so they'll be 3.5 inches wide. Yeah, 3.5 inches wide. Separating each of the 6 panels. And then I'll do a black border. And then I'll figure out what to do from there. I think this is going to be one of those quilt tops that I just kind of finish that portion of the quilt top and then put it away until I actually decide what to do with it and then work on some other quilts. But that's very exciting. I'm really liking what I can do with these strip quilts. I need to rewatch that Strip Your Stash by, I forgot who it is. Nancy somebody on Craftsy. Because I really enjoy the process of the strip quilting. Once you get your strips sewn together and figured out, you just kind of fly for your quilt top. So there's some other styles that I want to try with some other fabrics I have, which is super exciting. I'm really enjoying quilting right now. Don't know what it is precisely, other than the fact that I can work Halloweenies forever for quilts. Halloween fabric is so fun and dynamic. I don't know, but that's where I'm at. I'm in a quilting headspace right now, at least putting together the quilt tops. I'm really enjoying playing with fabric. And that's gonna bring us to new stuff. The only new stuff I have is from the New England Fiber Festival haul, which is a good thing. A good thing. So yeah, New England Fiber Festival. First stop we went to was the Classy Squid Fiber Company booth. because Amanda's amazing and she does amazing things with fiber, and we hadn't bought anything at Needles Up at Rhinebeck because we knew we were going to see her at New England Fiber Festival. And my mom bought something because she's going to learn how to drop spindle, which is exciting. She hit that point in her knitting where she was like, now I'm curious about fiber, which we're all going to encourage. But yeah, we went to the Classy Squid Fiber Company booth and I did some damage, because I always do, because I love Classy Squid Fiber Company fiber. So I got 2 bats. First one is this bat. It's called All the Mirrors of the World. It's made with BFL, mohair, Muga silk, tussin oil, Firestar, carbonized bamboo, and Angelina. So it's just, let's get that in focus. A kind of neutrals type bat with a little bit of gray, a little bit of light brown. Sheepy. That's that one. I'm not going to try and put it back in the bag on camera. And then I got the Raven King bat, which is a Cori Polypay fleece, black alpaca, mulberry silk, and Angelina sparkle. And this one has some really deep veins of color in it, but it's mostly black. I really, really like this. Oop, let's just drop it. And that's that. They're both 2-ounce bats. And then I bought a braid from her. It's a Shetland braid. It's colorway Blue Wood. This one will not be spun on its own. I believe I have enough of the purplish, bluish, black fibers to blend for a sweater's quantity. So I'm starting in on collecting for a blue-green sweater spin. So this one will just go in my stash for now, pending sweater spin, so I can either divvy these up and just have really interestingly marled yarn, or do it like I'm going to do with the purple, black, blue, and blend it on the drum carder. I haven't decided yet, but I only have one of these because greens are very particular for me. So this is one. And maybe I'll just slowly buy an entire sweater's quantity of fiber from Amanda. It might happen. We don't know. And then I bought another braid of fiber because I couldn't pass it up. This company, this is from Skirted Fleece Mill, and they have these 8-ounce braids hanging, which I could not walk away from. This is a merino Tessa silk braid. And while I've kind of avoided merino for spinning for a while, it's an 8-ounce braid, and this is dyed as a watermelon. So it's a watermelon colorway. 8 ounces of watermelon. How could you walk away from that? It's really hard to walk away from that. This one I'll probably do a fractal spin on because I really like how fractal spins look with like this level of contrast. So that will be fun. That will be a lot of fun. Ooh, or maybe I'll separate it out and do a gradient on one ply and broken up colors on the other ply. That would be cool. I don't know. I'll have to play. I love spinning. I did buy one skein of yarn, because usually I'm kind of yarned out by New England Fiber Festival, but 100 Ravens was there, and we always buy from 100 Ravens because we love them. And their theme this year was dragons. And so I had to buy a dragon yarn, and it is I Am Fire, I Am Death. This is on their Azer base, which is a kind of a sport weight base. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's wonderful and it's beautiful and I love dragons, and this is like the ideal, it's a color that I wear. This is the ideal like dragon yarn for me. It's pretty wonderful. And then I got a couple of other things. Going Gnome was at New England Fiber Festival. They are also at Rhinebeck, but Rhinebeck's so overwhelming I can't make choices. But I bought a felting kit. I bought a St. Nicholas felting kit. I enjoyed the needle felting I did on the hedgehog out of a kit. But I didn't quite so much enjoy the needle felting of my little dudes that I did freehand. So I do want a needle felted St. Nick. I was looking at them at Rhinebeck and it's very glary. Considering whether or not to buy one. But I want to see if I like the process of this with the kit. Because if I like the kits, then I just have to get a couple of stuff that I want to make and then just obtain fiber for those things instead of, I don't know, work my way up to the kind of make up your own needle felting. So yeah, I got a St. Nick kit. And then I just got to show you guys this because it's it's my favorite thing that I bought at New England Fiber Festival. It's a needle felted ornament from Lanart, and it's a goat with a walking stick in a coat. I could not walk away from this guy. He's going to go on my Christmas tree, which is going to be in this room this year because there's going to be a real Christmas tree in my craft room this year because that's a room where we normally put a Christmas tree. So I'm excited about it. I love this little goat. And links to their website will be in the show notes as well. Links to all these will be in the show notes. Okay, go back in the bag, little goat. That's all the new stuff. Yeah, that's it. So, on to other stuff. Not a whole lot of other stuff. Stuff I'm listening to. I finished listening to The Last Command, the third book of the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, narrated by Mark Thompson. And it was like in the last few chapters of this book that I realized that I've read this book before. I don't know if I've read the entirety of the Thrawn trilogy before, but remember, I was not surprised by anything that was happening in the books, and I couldn't remember if I'd read them before. I've definitely read The Last Command before. That clone lightsaber fight, I have vivid memories of reading that before. Oh boy. That's always fun, reading Star Wars books, because I don't know what I've read. I don't know what I've read. But I've started a new audiobook, The Millennium Falcon by James Luceno, narrated by Mark Thompson, because Mark Thompson narrates a lot of Star Wars audiobooks. This one is really good. I wasn't sure how it was going to go at the beginning, because it kind of starts with a couple of brief looks at previous owners of the Millennium Falcon. But now we're kind of more into the plot side of things with Han and Leia post a whole bunch of extended universe stuff. They're grandparents at this point. So yeah, in the the new sequel trilogy era, but not compliant with the new sequel trilogy. Them trying to just kind of going on a little quest to trace back the roots of the Millennium Falcon, while they're kind of on a vacation with their granddaughter. And another character who's from the earlier owners of the Millennium Falcon, who is trying to trace it back the other way. So from when he owned it, several owners back, trying to trace it forwards to who has it now, which is really interesting, and I'm looking forward to where this is going to go. And then stuff I'm reading. Last episode, I had 50 bajillion fanfics that I talked to you about. And I've read about 50 bajillion fanfics since then, but they've all been kind of in the same vein as those fics, except for one. So it's been a lot of somebody at Hogwarts notices that Harry is being abused, and most of the time it's Snape, and he does something about it, and that kind of thing. I've been reading a lot of that lately. But this fic was in one of those collections, but it's very different from the other ones that I was reading. It's called By Baker Street Station, I Sat Down and Wept by Deco. And the summary is, Petunia Dursley has trouble. She's lost her family, she's going crazy, she can do magic but not always. Her suitors are a mixed bag, operative word, and people keep trying to take her children away from her. They should be very afraid. I'm not finished with this fic. I'm on chapter 86, I think. It's a long one, but it moves quickly. I'm already in their 5th year, I think. Harry's 5th year. And Dudley's 5th year. Yeah. I'm really loving this fic universe. I haven't run into that many Petunia-centric fics. And this one is pretty top-notch. I mean, she's still very Petunia. She's nosy and opinionated and, like, shrewd and exacting. But this is a Petunia who realized very early on in her marriage to Vernon Dursley that she was not happy, that Vernon Dursley is a terrible person, and like she had a moment when Harry Potter was left on her doorstep and she was reading that letter from Dumbledore, that it got through to her that Harry Potter is her only living relative except for her son. Like, that's it. Her parents are gone. Her sister and her family is gone. It's just Harry and her and Dudley. That's all she's got left. And, like, there's that moment of realization where she's like, this is all I have left of my family. And she's a character who can admit to herself that, yeah, she was extremely jealous of her sister and the world she got to be a part of, and she hated her for that, for having those opportunities. But even as she hated her, she loved her and is devastated that that relationship is finished. She can't fix it. There's no way to go back. And this Petunia is an incredibly strong character, and she doesn't start out that way. Or at least she doesn't seem to start out that way, but she kind of learns to rely on her own confidence and her stubbornness and what she believes, and is really headstrong and sensible through an incredible series of nonsense and a never-ending string of ridiculous people. Also, this universe takes place where Petunia and Lily are not strictly Muggle-born. If you go back far enough, they come from a squib line out of a wizarding family, which Petunia discovers, and part of that is why Petunia starts exhibiting brief bouts of magic after the death of her parents and the trauma of that, kind of slowly bringing that out, and the increase of that power, sort of her having to adapt to that, and also raising Harry and Dudley as magical children, and sensible, stubborn Petunia Dursley dealing with the wizarding world directly is fantastic. Because she's constantly just like overwhelmed with this feeling that wizards have no sense of common sense. They're absurd, ridiculous people. And seeing stubborn, sensible, single mother Petunia Dursley up against Albus Dumbledore, up against Dobby the House Elf, dealing with an exonerated Sirius Black, is super interesting and fun, and she's a mighty steamroller, and it's really, really great. And this fic is kind of following along with the books a bit. Some of the stuff gets pushed up in the timeline because Petunia Dursley is nosy and has her eye on Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, because the things that she's learning about what goes on in that school are not suitable for children, like three-headed dogs and basilisks. And so she's got her eye on this school, and she will march down there and chew out a teacher if something is going wrong, which was delightful when Umbridge showed up at the school. That was great. So it's a really, really great fic. Cannot recommend it highly enough, especially since we get to play with a character that is really a one-sided character in the actual books, and you really don't see that much of. But this version of her, with the scope of the wizarding world that she gets to sink her teeth into, is really, really good. Fantastic. And that is going to do it for this episode. I think I've covered all the things that I wanted to talk about. So, show notes and links and everything are over at freakishlemon.com or freakishlemonpodcast.com. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message about anything I've talked about. Come join us on the Ravelry group. Just search Freakish Lemon in the Groups tab and you'll find us. Check out the blanket make-along there. You can follow me as Freakish Lemon at all fun places like Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and Ravelry. Tumblr and Instagram are really where I'm at. Very different spaces, but, you know. If you're really looking to engage in my social media, those are the two places you should do it. And links to all these things will be in the down bar here on YouTube or somewhere around here if you're watching this elsewhere. And if you are here on YouTube and you want to follow along with this podcast and what I'm doing and when I post new episodes, consider hitting that little subscribe button down below. It'll let you know that I've posted new things. Yep. So that's gonna do it. That's it. That's it. Goodbye.